Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone to another Ref Brandon and the Todd family YouTube video. Gonna have another busy week here on the channel. We'll be doing our NASCAR review coming up one day this week. We'll also be doing a Braves report coming up this week. We'll have another top 10 countdown this week, which may or may not be wrestling related. So stay tuned for all that. And I've also been asked if I would do a early season preview for the LSU Tigers, or as some call them, the LSU Bayou Bengals, on my prediction for an over-under for them for the 2021 football season. And I've also got a buddy that just subscribed to the channel over the weekend named Chris, who is a Cincinnati Bengals fan. So for him, I'm going to try to do my prediction of what I think the Bengals will do in the 2021 NFL season. So for all you NFL fans, stay tuned for that. But today, I know I've already mentioned last week that I was going to talk about this coming up one day next week. Well, I'm going to do it for today's video, and that is why I'm struggling to decide who I think is going to win the game between Clemson and Georgia. Now, a couple of weeks ago, I gave some thoughts as far as what I think are keys to a victory, so to speak, for both teams if they want to win the game, but I did not say who was going to win, and I'm still not going to pick who's going to win. Thank God the game is still about 100 days away, because I really truly have no idea who I think is going to win the game, and I'm fixing to tell you why I can't decide who's going to win that game. So if you're a college football fan or know someone who is, please feel free to tell them to go ahead, like, comment, share, and subscribe on the video, and give me your thoughts on the game. If you're ready to decide who you think is going to win, that's perfectly fine. Go ahead and shoot your shot and pick your winner and find out if you're right or not, and you've still got time to come back in a month or so and change your mind, as long as you want to change your mind before the game gets here. But I will wait until it's closer to the game, because I really truly have no idea who I think is going to win the game. But before I get into my thoughts on the game and why I'm struggling to pick a winner, don't forget, when we get to 500 subscribers, we'll be having a giveaway, and I'll probably wait until we get to 502 or 503, and the reason is, sometimes, for whatever reason, you lose subscribers. You don't know what makes people change their mind, but it does happen. So I don't want to do it right at 500 and then turn around and go back to 498. So I'll probably wait until we get to like 502 or 503, so that if we do lose one or two, no big deal. We're still at 500. We had a giveaway at 100, and we'll be having another one at 500, and hopefully we'll be there coming up in the next couple of weeks. But I like it when the earth rotates. It really makes my day. And that is your dad joke of the day. And now I'll go ahead and get into my thoughts on the game. And as a longtime Clemson fan, I've been a Clemson fan since 1996. The very first game I watched was New Year's Day, when they played Syracuse in the Gator Bowl. And Syracuse had Donovan McNabb at quarterback and Marvin Harrison at wide receiver. And Clemson had Nealon Green at quarterback. Raymond Priester was the running back, and Tommy West was their head coach. And Syracuse beat Clemson that day 41-0. And that was the first time I'd ever watched Clemson in my life. And when the game ended, I thought, that's my team right there. And I've been a fan ever since then. But of course, I was 11 years old back then, so I took some time away from actually watching the games, and just listened on the radio here and there and watched highlights. But in 1998 is when I first really truly started watching every single Clemson game, and for the past 23 years I probably haven't missed 5 games maybe. Now, I don't get to watch many of them live anymore, because I'm in the wrestling ring almost every single Saturday night, so a lot of times I have to go back and watch the game later on that week, but I do always watch the games, and I watch every single play intently. And as a longtime Clemson fan, going back to the late 90s, this was before Miami, before Boston College, before Syracuse, before Notre Dame, before Virginia Tech, and Clemson was a 6-win team, 7-win team, maybe. And that's why when people talk about, well, Clemson only wins because the ACC sucks, I say that's not true, because the ACC was worse back then than it is now, and Clemson didn't win. And the reason was Clemson sucked. It doesn't matter what conference you're in. If you suck, you suck. If you're good, you're good. And back in those days, it was a 9-team conference, and Clemson was terrible. And I got so used to seeing them lose all the time that any time they played anybody good, I would always just convince myself they were going to get beat. Because it makes it easier that way. If you go ahead and face the fact that you're going to get beat when your team gets beat, it's not a big deal. You expected it. But if you pull off the victory, you're excited, you're ecstatic, and it's shocking. And I got so used to having that mindset and that mind frame that even after Dabo Swinney came along and turned the program around, for years and years and years, I still, even after 2 national championships, I tell myself when they play a top 5 team, they're going to get beat. And that way when they do, I'm not surprised by it. And if they win, I'm surprised, but I'd rather be surprised we won than be surprised we lost, because nobody wants to be let down. And that's always been my mindset. So when I first heard that Clemson and Georgia was going to play this year, my first reaction was Georgia's going to win. And then I thought, well, it's not really a big deal anyway, because even if Georgia does win, Clemson can still run the table, finish 11-1, and then win their ACC championship game and go 12-1 and go to the playoffs. So that's the first game of the season. It's not a conference game. No big deal. And then after watching the way Clemson played last year against Ohio State and just looked dreadful, I thought, they're not beating Georgia. There's no way they're beating Georgia. They'll get destroyed. But now as we approach the season, and it's only a little over 100 days away from the start of the season, I look at it now and I'm like, you know what? I say Georgia's going to win, but at the same time, I don't trust Georgia. I've never trusted Georgia. Georgia's been preseason national champions for 40 straight years. They were the only team in the country that finished in the top 10 in recruiting from 2001 to 2010, and they didn't win anything. They play, according to most people, a top 10, a top 5, and according to some people, they play in the best college town in America. So they have no trouble recruiting players, and they still, no matter whether it's Jim Donnan, if it's Mark Richt or Kirby Smart, they still finish top 10 in recruiting every single year, and they have not won anything in 40 years. In my lifetime, they haven't won anything, but yet they're there every single year. So I've learned that you can't trust Georgia. So then it leads me back to, who do I think is going to win the game? And then I look at it, and I keep hearing that Georgia is going to open up the offense. But they've said that ever since Kirby Smart was the head coach. Justin Fields went to Georgia because he was told they were going to run the spread. They didn't. James Coker took the job as the offensive coordinator, and he was told they was going to run the spread, and they didn't. So I keep hearing that, but then they said that last year, and then they ran the spread until the Kentucky game, and I guess in that game, Kirby Smart had a brain fart. I don't know, but in that game, they threw the ball maybe 10 times the entire game. Luckily for them, Kentucky's offense was so pitiful that it didn't matter. But they went from having a spread offense to all of a sudden having a prehistoric 1890s offense. So until I see it consistently, I'm not going to sit here and say that I believe Georgia is going to run the spread offense consistently, because I don't. I feel like there's going to be at least one game every year where Kirby Smart's going to try to outsmart himself and go back to the old days and try to line up and run the ball 50 times, and it's going to cost Georgia a game. That's just the way I feel about it. Then I look at Clemson and I realize that a lot of people thought Travis Etienne was the heart and soul of the team. Well, he's gone now. And not only is he gone, but they've had two running backs transfer. So you've got Lynn J. Dixon this year and Kobe Pace, and that's really the only two running backs that they have on the roster with any experience. Now they've got a freshman coming in named Will Shipley that is supposed to be really good, but he's never played. So I don't see him doing a whole lot early in the season. If he sees the field against Georgia and gets more than one or two carries, I'll be surprised. So they don't really have any kind of a running game. Jackson Carman, who I think personally was extremely overrated, but he's gone now. He was their best offensive lineman. He got drafted in the NFL. I wouldn't have drafted him. To me, he was garbage. But he was a 5-star offensive lineman out of Ohio, and he's gone now, and he was their best offensive lineman. So I don't know if I trust Clemson's offensive line to block Georgia's defensive line, because I do think Georgia's defensive line is going to be really, really good. And if Clemson's offensive line can't block Georgia's defensive line, it doesn't matter if Lynn J. Dixon ends up being a pretty good running back for his 1 year as the starter. Because if Clemson's O-line can't block Georgia's D-line, he won't get but 5 or 6 carries, because Clemson's going to be in second down and third down and long the entire game. And then Justin Ross is healthy now. Of course, he missed all of last year with a neck injury, but his first game back, you can't target him 30 times. So they're going to have some wide receiver step up and help him out. And the offensive line is going to have to give DJ time to throw the ball. I personally think DJ has a better arm than Taj Boyd, a better arm than Deshaun Watson, and a better arm than Trevor Lawrence. If the offensive line gives him time, DJ will be a phenomenal, phenomenal quarterback. Then I look at Georgia, and Georgia's weakness is their secondary. So if DJ gets time to throw the ball, I think he's going to shred Georgia's secondary if he has time to throw the ball. Georgia's linebackers are going to be decent, and their defensive line is going to be really good, but their secondary is going to be their weakness. But then I look when Georgia has the ball, and I know if they do stick with running the spread, they're going to give Clemson fits, because Clemson is pretty much the same kind of defense Georgia is. Clemson's secondary is going to be atrocious. The last 2 games we've played against teams with any kind of an offense at all, when the defense was healthy, was the 2019 National Championship game against LSU, where the secondary got torched, and then last year's playoff game against Ohio State, where the secondary might as well just stayed on the bench because they didn't do anything. They were pointless being on the field. So it might as well have been 11-on-7. I don't count the Notre Dame game last year in the regular season because we had 8 starters on defense that were hurt. So when almost your entire defense is out, the whole defense is going to look bad. So that's why I said the last 2 games where we played a spread offense with a defense that was healthy was LSU and Ohio State, and the defense, basically mainly the secondary, got torched both times. If our secondary is still that bad and Georgia does run the spread and they stick with the spread, then JT Daniels will torch Clemson's secondary. But just like Georgia, Clemson is going to have an amazing defensive line. A few years back when they had Dexter Lawrence and Austin Bryant and all those guys, 3 of the 4 went in the first round. Well, this year with Brian Bresee and Miles Murphy and all those guys, these guys are just as good, if not better. So Clemson's defensive line is going to be really good, and Clemson's linebackers are going to be really good. But I don't know about the secondary. If I knew for sure Georgia was going to run the spread and stick with it, I would probably say right now that I think Georgia's going to win the game. But I don't trust Kirby Smart. He's had too many times to come out and say he's going to run that offense, and he says it, and they don't do it. So until I see it, I don't believe it. And now with George Pickens going to be out that game, for sure out that game, now they're saying that he may be back later on in the season, but he will definitely miss the game against Clemson. And Blaylock is still there, but Blaylock has been at Georgia since 1975, and he's caught maybe 10 passes. So until I see him go out there and consistently catch the ball, Blaylock just doesn't scare me at all. So I honestly, really, truly don't know who I think is going to win this game. But don't worry, the game ain't until September. It's just now late May. I will still pick a winner before the season gets here. And whichever team I pick will be the team that I stick with, right or wrong. And then after the game, I'll come back on here later on the following week and say, whether I was right or wrong and the reasons why I was right or wrong. But I will pick a winner, and I'll break the game down more as we get closer. And then the day that I actually pick the winner, I will explain why I'm picking that team. But I'm going to continue to sit back and analyze it and continue to find reasons why I think both teams can win, but also reasons why I think both teams could lose. But honestly, truly, I'm not like some people. Some people are saying that it's a must-win game for Clemson or it's a must-win game for Georgia. I don't feel that way. I really don't. Like I said earlier in the video, I really feel like if Clemson loses, they could run the table and finish 11-1, win the conference championship, still go to the playoffs. If Georgia loses, they could run the table and go 11-1 and win their conference championship and still go to the playoffs. So there's a chance that no matter who wins and who loses this game, that both these teams go to the playoffs. So at the end of the day, the game really may not mean anything except for good entertainment value. But outside of that, if both teams make the playoffs, then this game really doesn't mean anything except for bragging rights for whichever team wins the game. But outside of that, I don't really think whoever loses the game is going to be knocked out of the playoffs because they lost this game. And I know most people are just assuming that Alabama is going to win the SEC West this year, and they might, but I'm not so sure about that. So if Georgia does win the East, I'm not so sure that they're going to play Alabama in the conference championship. And if they do, this might be the year that a former Nick Saban assistant finally beats him in a game, because I'm not sold on Alabama. Now, when you watch the video in its entirety, if you want to ask me on the comment section why I'm not so big on Alabama this year, I'll be more than happy to tell you. If not, just keep watching the channel. I'll talk about them more as we get closer to the season, but I'm not as sold on Bama as everybody else is. They're still going to be a great team, but I think they're going to be a borderline top 7, top 8 team, not a borderline playoff team. That's just my thoughts. But please feel free to go ahead and give me your comments and your thoughts, not only on the Clemson-Georgia game, but also Alabama. Am I crazy? Is Bama going to be up there again, or is there a chance that they don't make the playoffs this year? Coming up probably around July, maybe early August, I'll tell you who I think are going to be the 4 playoff teams and which teams are going to win each conference, but it's still too early for that. I just wanted to jump on here and give my thoughts and my reasons on why I can't decide who I think is going to win between Clemson and Georgia. Of course, the first point spread, it came out earlier last week. I think it was Tuesday, and right now it's Clemson by 3 points, which is about what I expected. I figured it would be Clemson by 2 or 3 or Georgia by 2 or 3. So the point spread is right where I thought it would be. Neither team is going to be favored by more than 3 or 4 points going into the game. But that's going to wrap it up for this video for Ref Brandon and the Todd family. Until next time, it's Ref Brandon saying, just like in pro wrestling, life can be over by the count of 3. Tell your friends and family how much you love them. Bye.